I am Ellen and I am ability. I have had a disability for my entire life, but I've only considered myself to be disabled for about 3.5 years. My primary disability is a congenital hip dysplasia, which I was born with. Most children, when they're born, their hips are fine. However, quite common in breech presentation babies is their hips aren't, and I was breech presentation. Most of the time you will have your socket and you will have your femur, and they will fit nicely and they can move and be fine. In the common cases of congenital hip dysfunction, it just kind of pops in and out, it's loose. My condition was not that straightforward, and the common test they do for this condition is called the clicky hips test, where they lay the infant on their back and will move the leg in such a way that it will cause the hip joint to sort of open and close, and if it does, it will click. Now mine didn't click, so they turned around and said I'm fine. It turned out that I had a false negative. At around 21 months old, I was at a checkup for an infection, and a discussion was held between the doctor and my mother about my walking. At this point I was walking, but it was 1 step, 2 step, wobble, fall over, and it was a concern to the doctor that that was where I was at over 1.5 years, very nearly 2 years old. So she asked if I could be sent for an x-ray. After a long morning in the hospital, an x-ray came back showing that I had no right hip socket and that I had the congenital hip dysplasia, which had been missed on the clicky hips test because I had no socket for my hip to click in and out of. My mum always accounts for that day she'd never seen the staff in the hospital move so fast. I'd seen every paediatrician and orthopaedic surgeon in our hospital, and I'm being referred to a sister hospital to see a specialist in paediatric orthopedics. And this guy is probably one of my heroes. He's the reason I can walk. He's the reason I'm not suffering with a considerably worse limp than I have. He's the reason I'm not wheelchair bound. My hips were repaired when I was 23 months old. I spent 3 months in a frog plaster and let to about 3 times. I have then suffered on and off ever since because of that condition. During primary school it wasn't too difficult to handle. It mainly became a problem during PE. I was slower than everyone else and not as bendy, flexible, but it wasn't difficult. It was going to secondary school that I began to suffer. I lived 20 minutes walk away from my secondary, and my secondary was based across 2 campuses which were connected by a bridge, and there was no option but to go over this bridge. So every day I'd walk to school and maybe walk over the bridge for 5 times depending on the day. It often meant that I couldn't fully take part in PE lessons. I'd often stop at my grandparents on the way home. They lived like 5 minutes from the school, and I'd stop there for a rest and a drink, and I became reliant on painkillers on really tough days. It also led to bullying and accusations of skiving and being lazy when I wouldn't take part in PE. I had a few things that helped me get through this. swimming, lifesaving, water sports. I love being in the water. Water reduces the impact of gravity on my hips. The water resistance keeps me up. I can move much better in water, and I can engage in sport without the pains I can get for longer being in guiding. It wasn't all about who was the fastest or who was really good at stuff. Where we met was literally at the end of my street. I could find things that I was good at within that. They also helped endorse some of my water activities through a few badges that I was able to earn, and it was somewhere that I felt included. I didn't have to be the best because it was my own best that mattered. The other was through school having teachers that were supportive, and you change schools to do your GCSEs and potentially your A-levels. That school was the other side of town, so it was the side I lived on. I'd be 14 and it was a huge thing for me. I didn't have the bridge anymore, which was amazing. Not having to walk over that in the rain and after PE, when I was already struggling, was great. PE became less difficult. We were able to choose what we wanted to do, and I discovered that if I was going to do it, I tended to pick things like basketball or netball because I didn't have to run too far, and often because people knew I was slow and the other team wouldn't mark me because they'd think nobody would pass, and then I was able to get hold of the ball and help people shoot, so our team tended to win or do fairly well. However, during my time at my GCSEs, I developed my second disability. We had a task in history for GCSE to write a coursework guessing. We had 4 1-hour sessions to do it in once we'd done all the teaching and the prep, and I was very excited about this. I love history, and it was about South Africa and apartheid, and I was very interested in the topic. I wrote it, I got a wonderful grade for it, and I was so happy. I finished writing it on a Wednesday, and I noticed some pain in my right thumb. Couldn't move it very well, and it was very uncomfortable. By the next morning, I couldn't move my hand and my arm to about here. My mum called the school, told them I wasn't coming. I had a doctor's appointment to find out what was wrong. It wasn't a fun appointment. They basically told me that I basically wasn't to write for the next few weeks. I got lucky with it, really, that my friends helped me with taking notes when I couldn't write. The teachers were quite supportive over it, and when I came to do my exams at the end of year 11, I got a scribe, so somebody wrote them for me, and I managed to get, I think it was 10 GCSEs A to C. I then had to do my A-levels. Now, where the school I was at did A-levels, so I chose I'd stay. Same teachers, same campus, so everybody knew me, knew what I could do, what I couldn't do. I didn't have to worry about trying to settle into somewhere new, and a lot of my friends were still going to be there, so a lot of the kind of worries about going to a 6-1 college weren't there. And it all started out quite well. Things tipped around the January after we did our mocks. When the results came back from my mocks, they weren't great. Chemistry were really willing to, so it was kind of half and half. Chemistry put on some extra sessions that I was able to go to. Biology told me that everyone did really badly, and I did one of the best out of those doing really badly, so they weren't worried. Psychology actually went really well, and history was, as history always was. I was good, but my essays still needed a little bit of work. I hoped in the run-up to the exams that somebody would come and ask me if I still needed a scribe or some sort of assistance, but nobody did. Nobody did anything. and I sat all my A-level exams myself. Now during the period of my A-level exams I became ill for a few days, so I missed, I think it was 2 exams. That meant that I was unable to complete the psychology course, and my biology grade was going to be determined by the exam I had sat and my ISA, which was the practical assessment. And this then flagged up discussions about my grades, and my school basically decided to write me off. They said I wasn't going to amount to anything, and the grades weren't going to be good enough, and they wouldn't let me resit. I don't know why exactly. The school kind of said we'd look at it, come up with a plan just in case the results came back that way. Now, had they mentioned this before I'd sat my exams, I could have opted not to take them and then been able to resit the following year, but instead they hounded me to think about different subjects and basically start again. Come end of August, mid-August when the results came out, I had passed history. I was allowed to resit psychology because I had an incomplete. However, I was not allowed to redo chemistry or biology because I'd failed and they didn't think I'd be able to pass. A few weeks later, I officially dropped out. They hadn't supported me the way I'd hoped they had. And considering they'd supported me well before, it made sense for them to keep supporting me. It led to this sort of spiral of things going on. At the time though, I still had a few things going that kept me going. My guiding life was very important. It kept me busy, it kept me social, it kept me doing stuff. It allowed me to channel my focus somewhere, knowing that I was helping other people become better people. And there's my mum. She's my rock, and I just, throughout everything, she's always been there, and I don't know what I'd do without my mum. Things did turn around. I took a year out, and then I went to sixth form. Through the whole process, I sort of developed my next hurdle, my next disability, just my general anxiety disorder. I'd always had a little bit of social anxiety. I never quite fitted in. I had been bullied on and off throughout for different things. The sort of social anxiety, I was so used to just kind of people would talk to me but weren't not necessarily wanting to hang around with me, built, and I became anxious about lots of other things. And the thought of going back to sixth form throughout an anxiety about my academic performance. What if it happened again? What if I failed everything again and then they told me they didn't want me? I eventually got treatment to out the anxiety. I still struggle with it every day. But I did get sixth form. I got out with 2 C's and a D. I got into uni, which was what I wanted. Now, the little me that wanted to be a child orthopaedic surgeon, because my first hero was a child orthopaedic surgeon who allowed me to be able to walk. Well, it's not what I'm going to be doing. But I got into uni to study psychology. Something that I enjoy, something that is interesting and exciting. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I'm working that out. But there's a few options. My anxiety got particularly bad during my second year when I became very isolated from people. Due to kind of who I ended up making friends with, I ended up living alone, which I do not recommend unless you really are really actively social. You go out, people here, and I became very neurotic about everything. It became very difficult, and a lot of people either didn't know or they did know and just kind of didn't do anything. It did improve. I now live with some other people and it's much better. I'd be able to talk to. Uni have been really supportive with everything. They put, I have a learning contract, which means I have extra support. So I get a chair and footstool in exams. I'm allowed to leave lectures and seminars to go for a walk if I need to stretch my hips out. I also have stuff in place for my wrist, so I record all my lectures and I type exams. It's been difficult over time, but I've tried not to let it stop me. I give things a go. I tried to make sure that it's not what defines me. Now, I thought that I've been disabled my whole life, but I've had a disability my whole life, but I've only been disabled for about 3.5 years-ish. I say that because I never considered it a disability until I was filling out my university applications, my UCAS, and they were talking about things that were disabilities and things you might have to claim for, and I discovered that in the eyes of UCAS and universities, the things that are wrong with me are disabilities. It opened my eyes to what's available to me. I'm still kind of working out things I can get, support I can apply for, things like that. But it has its difficulties. I get a bus to Brownies currently, and there's times where I desperately want to sit down because I know I'm going to be on my feet at Brownies, but I know that I could cause people to get angry or upset because I've taken a seat when there could be an elderly person that needs it. But I'm as entitled as them, but I don't look it. And I sometimes think maybe I should get a badge that says I'm disabled, but I shouldn't have to explain myself. It should just be accepted that some disabilities aren't visible. If I was to give advice to anyone, whether it's a huge, clearly obvious disability or something that's somewhat discreet, it's embrace yourself and what others think. It doesn't matter. If you need help, ask for it. Don't be afraid, don't be ashamed of it. It has had an impact on my self-esteem, and I think recently I've realised that happiness and confidence and being able to be yourself is very important. I want a tattoo on my right hip somewhere that makes a comment about my scars. Something kind of slightly corny and cliched, like these are the scars that made me. Because they are. They've always been there. I remember my surgeon said that I could get surgery on them to tidy them up, neaten them up, and I just sort of looked here and went, no, I'm used to them. They've always been there for as long as I can remember, and they're going to be there for till I die. Focus on what you can do. I know there's things I can't. I can run, I just can't run very fast. So I focus on that I can sort of run. There's lots of things that are not impacted by my disabilities. I know I can swim. Just don't be afraid to tell people and talk about it. Educate them. People are very stupid and very naive, and they sort of think that to be disabled and need support means it's got to be very clear and very blatant, and that's not the case. Most people that are disabled, it might only be something minor in the grand scheme, but to them, it can have a huge impact on their lives. And you've got to educate, and when people realise that this isn't as straightforward as, oh look, they're in a wheelchair, oh look, they've got a walking stick, and that actually just because I can walk doesn't mean I'm not in need of support. Just because I can write doesn't mean that I don't need support. Just because I turn up to university and I'm a brownie leader, doesn't, I'm a guide leader, a rainbow leader, doesn't mean that I don't have issues with self-esteem and confidence and anxiety. It's taken me a long time to have the confidence to get on a bus on my own. Work out what you can do and focus on that. And if anybody sits there and tells you it doesn't matter, embrace you, what you can do, who you are. I am Ellan, and I am ability.